welcome to another story time here in Nature, Poetry, and Stories. And today's story is about the most loved and most hated queen of France, Queen Marie Antoinette. Kids, are you curious why she's the most loved and most hated queen of France? If you're ready to find out, I am ready to tell the story to you. Let's start! Marie Antoinette, a princess in Schönbrunn. Marie Antoinette came from a family of 16 children and was born on November 2, 1755 in Vienna. This young girl spent her childhood playing with her brothers and sisters in the walkways of Schönbrunn Palace. Her upbringing, which placed more importance on appearance than knowledge, was quite simple. There were soon plans for her to marry Louis, a member of the French royal family. The marriage was arranged in order to resolve the conflict between Austria and France. After her mother, Maria Theresa of Austria, tried to discipline the carefree princess. A future queen of France, the young girl, who was considered mischievous and scatterbrained, went on to receive an excellent education so that she could follow the rules of the French court. She also improved her French thanks to the hard work of her teacher. After a long journey, she arrived at the castle of Versailles and married Louis on May 16, 1770. Louis was now the heir to the throne. Feasts, balls, and even a spectacular fireworks display were organized to celebrate the newlyweds. They were just 14 and 15 years old on their wedding day. The coronation of Louis XVI. On May 10, 1774, Louis XV died. It was therefore the newlyweds' turn to rule France. Louis' coronation took place the following year in Reims. The whole court was there at the cathedral, including Marie Antoinette. The grand prior brought along the holy ampule, a vial containing sacred oil that was supposedly used for the baptism of Clovis. A few drops of oil were placed on the new king, who was now named Louis XVI. Although he may have won the affection of the people, his wife certainly had not. The Queen of Indulgence. The young queen was not very well liked in France. Was it because she was slow to give birth to an heir? Or was her extravagant behavior to blame? After all, Marie Antoinette set new fashion trends, changed her hairstyle every day, and bought luxurious jewelry, which was often paid for by the king. She wanted to live in a beautifully decorated house and demanded that everything was done exactly as she wanted. Meanwhile, life was very difficult for the French people. The things they were hearing about the queen and her expensive lifestyle made them very angry. The Queens Hamlet. However, Marie Antoinette was not happy in the court. She was bored by her duties. So, she brought her relatives to her Petit Trianon, a small villa, and her hamlet, just a stone's throw from the castle of Versailles. There were small houses, a dovecote, a mill, and a farm, so that the queen had a supply of eggs and fresh milk for herself and her children. Theater productions and music were often performed by the pond. There she almost forgot that she was Queen of France. The Revolution. In 1789, anger towards Marie Antoinette was at a breaking point. The worst rumors about her spending habits were circulating through the country, and the people were becoming more and more hungry. The king fired Necker, a respected minister. This was the final straw. On July 14, Parisians revolted and took up arms. Everyone headed to the Bastille. The governor of the prison was panicked by this uprising and finally ordered the crowd to be shot. The people's rage was uncontrollable. The revolution was in motion. In flight to Varennes, in October 1789, the king and his family had to leave Versailles and return to Paris. There, they lost their freedom and were forced to stay locked up in the Tuileries Palace. In 1791, spurred on by his wife, the king prepared for their escape. One night, they managed to leave Paris, but a stopover in Saint-Menehould in Champagne was disastrous for them. Despite their disguises, the postmaster John Baptiste Douai recognized them. The royal family was arrested in Varennes and forcibly taken back to Paris. The execution of Louis XVI. The people had lost confidence in their rulers, so when Marie Antoinette, the king, their daughter Marie-Therese, 14 years old, and their son Louis Charles, 8 years old, returned to Paris, they were transferred to a fortress in the city center known as the Temple Prison. The couple was separated. Marie Antoinette said goodbye to her husband Louis XVI and was never to set eyes on him again. He was guillotined on January 21, 1793 at 10:22 a.m. To everyone's surprise, the king's death sentence was only passed with a very small majority. In prison, Marie Antoinette had just learned of the king's death. Now, all she had left was the affection of her children and her unrealistic plans for freedom. But her attempts to escape failed. Her life in prison was difficult. One day, soldiers came to take away her son, the child king. Devastated by grief, she spent more than 2 hours begging for her son back, but was unsuccessful. Little Louis XVI was sent to the shoemaker Simon and his wife, who were responsible for giving him a Republican upbringing. The trial. On October 14, 1793, the trial of Marie Antoinette began. The discussions were led by the merciless Fouquier Tinville. In addition to the crime of high treason, the queen was judged for her excessive spending habits and her harmful influence on Louis XVI. She defended herself desperately and even managed to move the audience. Despite this, on the night of October 16, 1793, she was sentenced to death. In the morning, she was transported in a simple cart to Place de la Révolution, Revolution Square, where she was guillotined. The end. Did you like our story for today? It is a sad story of what happened to King Louis XVI and Queen Antoinette. Their people actually were not happy of what they did while they were ruling the country. Unfortunately, they were punished for that. It is very hard to rule a country or become a leader. It takes a lot of responsibility. And that includes like showing good example to all the people you're leading to, because their eyes are always on you and you should always think about them first before yourself, and that is a quality of a good leader. I hope you learned something from the story today. Thank you so much for watching. See you again next week here in Nature, Poetry, and Stories. Have a good night and sweet dreams.